There are moments in life when the atmosphere around you feels subtly hostile, not loud, not obvious, but quietly resistant, as if something unseen is pressing against your progress. You can't quite explain it, yet your spirit senses it. This message is for that moment, when the confusion isn't coming from within you, but from what's operating around you. When your peace is disturbed not by your mistakes, but by proximity. If you've ever felt drained after certain interactions, second-guessed your clarity after speaking with someone close, or felt your motivation dissolve without reason, stay with me, because discernment begins exactly where denial ends. One of the earliest signs someone around you is being used against you is an unexplainable emotional exhaustion that follows contact with them. You might enter a conversation feeling centered, hopeful, and focused, only to walk away feeling heavy, doubtful, or strangely discouraged. This isn't ordinary disagreement or difference in personality. This is the slow erosion of your emotional stability, happening repeatedly, subtly, and predictably. Energy doesn't disappear without direction. When your strength consistently weakens after engaging with the same person, it's time to stop blaming yourself and start observing patterns. Another sign reveals itself through constant confusion. You find yourself questioning decisions you were once confident about. Plans that once felt clear now feel foggy after certain conversations. This person may not openly oppose you, but their words plant hesitation. They ask innocent questions that lead you to doubt your timing, your worth, or your readiness. Confusion is rarely random. When clarity leaves every time a specific voice enters the room, that voice may not be aligned with your growth. Pay attention to subtle discouragement disguised as concern. Someone being used against you often speaks in a tone that sounds caring, yet consistently highlights risk, fear, or failure. They say things like, "I just don't want you to get hurt," or "I'm only being realistic," but never speak life into your vision. Their advice always leans toward delay, retreat, or abandonment of your purpose. Support strengthens. Alignment empowers. Anything that repeatedly shrinks you while claiming to protect you deserves closer scrutiny. A critical sign is the absence of celebration when you make progress. When something good happens to you, their response feels flat, forced, or quickly redirected back to themselves. They change the subject, minimize your achievement, or respond with silence. Genuine connection rejoices with growth. Resistance feels threatened by it. When your elevation makes someone uncomfortable rather than inspired, something deeper is at work beneath the surface. Watch for patterns of subtle competition. This isn't obvious rivalry. It's comparison masked as conversation. They mirror your goals, copy your language, or suddenly pursue what you pursue, but with an undercurrent of tension. Instead of collaboration, there's quiet comparison. Instead of unity, there's unspoken rivalry. When someone can't walk beside you without measuring themselves against you, proximity becomes a battlefield rather than a bond. Another sign appears through repeated boundary violations. You set limits, express needs, or clarify expectations, yet they ignore them under the guise of closeness or familiarity. They overstep emotionally, demand access to your time, or dismiss your need for space. This erosion of boundaries slowly weakens your autonomy. Anyone aligned with your well-being will respect your limits. Disregard is not love, it is control wearing a friendly mask. This is not about paranoia, it's about perception. Discernment doesn't accuse, it observes. The goal is not to confront yet, but to awaken. Right now, your only task is awareness. Because once you see clearly, you stop leaking energy unconsciously. And when awareness rises, manipulation loses its grip. One of the most revealing signs someone around you is being used against you is a noticeable shift in their behavior once you begin to grow, heal, or gain clarity. They were comfortable when you were uncertain, struggling, or seeking guidance. But the moment you become more self-assured, something changes. Their tone subtly cools. Their warmth becomes selective. Growth exposes intentions because not everyone benefits from your strength. When someone prefers the version of you that needed them more than the version that stands independently, resistance quietly replaces support. Pay attention to inconsistent communication. This person may alternate between closeness and distance, encouragement and withdrawal, praise and subtle criticism. One day they are affirming you, the next day they are unreachable or emotionally cold. This inconsistency destabilizes your emotional footing and keeps you off balance. When connection feels like walking on shifting ground rather than solid support, it's often intentional. Stability empowers you. Instability keeps you dependent, unsure, and easier to influence. Another signal appears when private information you shared in trust begins to resurface in distorted ways. You may notice your words being repeated out of context, subtly used against you, or reframed to question your integrity or intentions. This person may not directly expose you, but they strategically leak pieces of your vulnerability. Information is power. When someone handles your truth carelessly or weaponizes it, they are no longer operating as a safe presence in your life. Watch how they respond when you set new standards. When you decide to rest more, protect your peace, or prioritize your purpose, they may accuse you of changing, becoming distant, or thinking you're better than others. This is not feedback, it's resistance. People aligned with you adjust. People threatened by your evolution attempt to guilt you back into old versions of yourself. Any connection that requires you to shrink to remain accepted is already misaligned. Another subtle sign is passive obstruction. This person doesn't openly oppose you, but things seem to stall around them. Deadlines get missed, messages aren't passed along, opportunities are delayed. Support they promise never fully materializes. When progress slows specifically in their involvement, but flows when they are absent, that pattern matters. Opposition doesn't always shout. Sometimes it delays, distracts, and drains until momentum quietly dies. You may also notice a pattern of emotional redirection. Whenever you express excitement, vision, or hope, the conversation is quickly redirected toward fear, negativity, or unrelated problems. They introduce doubt, worst-case scenarios, or discouraging stories just as your confidence rises. This isn't coincidence. Words shape reality. When someone consistently pulls the conversation away from hope, they are influencing your emotional direction more than you realize. Understand this clearly. Not everyone who stands near you stands for you. Some people are present not to support your path, but to interfere with it, often unconsciously, sometimes knowingly. Discernment is not about assigning labels. It's about recognizing impact. The moment you stop ignoring patterns, you reclaim authority over your emotional and mental space. One of the deepest signs someone around you is being used against you doesn't show up in their words or actions first. It shows up in your inner state. You begin to feel uneasy without a clear reason. Your intuition signals caution, yet your mind struggles to justify it. This inner tension is not anxiety, it is awareness trying to speak. When your spirit feels unsettled in someone's presence despite logical explanations, it's often because your subconscious is recognizing misalignment before your conscious mind is ready to accept it. Notice how your self-talk changes after interacting with this person. If you start doubting your worth, minimizing your dreams, or replaying conversations with a sense of regret or self-criticism, something is influencing your internal narrative. Healthy connections strengthen your inner voice. Misaligned ones quietly replace it with doubt. When someone leaves you questioning yourself more than the situation, the influence is not neutral. Another powerful indicator is emotional suppression. You may feel the need to dim your enthusiasm, withhold ideas, or censor your truth around them. You sense that being fully yourself invites judgment, envy, or resistance. This self-editing is a survival response. The mind adapts to environments where authenticity feels unsafe. When your expression shrinks around someone, it's not because you're insecure. It's because your awareness is protecting you. Watch for induced guilt. This person may subtly make you feel responsible for their emotions, struggles, or reactions. When you prioritize yourself, they appear hurt, disappointed, or distant, leading you to feel selfish for choosing your own peace. This guilt keeps you tethered, obligated, and hesitant to step fully into your purpose. Responsibility for another adult's emotional state is not love. It is a burden that drains your growth. Another internal sign is constant mental rehearsal. You replay conversations with them in your mind, imagining what you should have said, correcting your tone, or anticipating future interactions with anxiety. This mental looping indicates unresolved tension. Peaceful relationships don't require emotional rehearsals. When your mind is constantly preparing for someone, it's because the connection lacks psychological safety. You may also notice a decline in creative or spiritual clarity. Ideas feel blocked. Inspiration fades. Motivation weakens. This often happens not because you've lost direction, but because your energy is being redirected into managing emotional interference. Growth requires spaciousness. When someone consistently occupies your mental and emotional bandwidth, your creative flow suffers, and that cost is rarely accidental. Another subtle but powerful signal is internal resistance before seeing them. You feel reluctance, heaviness, or irritation without an obvious trigger. Your body reacts before your mind forms a reason. The nervous system is highly intelligent. It recognizes threat and misalignment faster than conscious thought. Ignoring this signal trains you to override your own inner guidance, which is often exactly what manipulation requires. This is where awareness deepens. The signs are no longer external. They are internal shifts, quiet alarms, emotional responses that refuse to be ignored. These signals are not weaknesses. They are protection. When you honor them, clarity returns. When you dismiss them, confusion deepens. A strong sign someone around you is being used against you becomes visible in group settings, in shared environments. Notice how your voice seems to lose weight when they are present. Ideas you express are ignored until repeated by someone else, or subtly dismissed without discussion. Yet when you are absent, those same ideas suddenly gain attention. This pattern reveals quiet undermining, where your presence is not honored, but your contribution is still consumed. Pay attention to how narratives about you are shaped when you're not in the room. You may sense shifts in how others treat you, cooler responses, subtle distance, or unexpected misunderstandings. These changes don't appear out of nowhere. Someone influencing perception behind the scenes can slowly distort your image without ever openly confronting you. Reputation erosion is one of the most discreet ways opposition operates. Another indicator is strategic isolation. This person may subtly discourage your connections with others by highlighting flaws, questioning motives, or sowing quiet doubt about people who support you. They frame it as protection or wisdom, but the result is distance between you and potential allies. Isolation weakens perspective. When your world narrows around a single influence, discernment becomes harder and dependency grows. Watch for triangulation. This happens when someone avoids direct communication with you, but instead speaks through others, relaying messages, concerns, or criticisms indirectly. This creates confusion, tension, and fractured trust. Healthy relationships value clarity and directness. Indirect communication keeps you guessing, defensive, and emotionally reactive, which serves interference far more than resolution. Another relational signal is selective honesty. They share partial truths while withholding key details, allowing misunderstandings to grow. When confronted, they may claim innocence or misunderstanding. But over time, you notice that clarity only appears when you actively seek it. Transparency should not require pursuit. When information feels deliberately fragmented, influence is being controlled rather than shared. Notice how conflict is handled. Instead of resolution, issues linger. Apologies feel vague. Accountability is avoided. The cycle repeats without closure. This emotional stagnation keeps wounds open and drains energy that could be used for growth. Resolution restores balance. Unresolved tension keeps you emotionally tethered and distracted. Another sign is emotional role reversal. You find yourself explaining, justifying, or defending your basic needs, while they position themselves as misunderstood or victimized. Over time, this flips responsibility and places the burden of harmony entirely on you. When maintaining peace costs you your voice, the relationship is no longer mutual. It's manipulative. These dynamics rarely announce themselves loudly. They unfold quietly over time, through patterns rather than moments. The key is not one interaction, but repetition. Discernment sharpens when you stop excusing patterns as coincidences. Two, one of the clearest signs someone around you is being used against you appears when your life begins to elevate. As you gain confidence, clarity, or direction, their behavior subtly shifts from neutral to resistant. They may not openly criticize your growth, but their energy changes. Conversations feel strained. Support becomes conditional. Growth exposes discomfort in those who benefited from your former uncertainty. Notice how they respond when you start setting higher standards. When you refuse chaos, protect your time, or say no without guilt, they may label you as difficult, distant, or changed. This framing is intentional. It pressures you to return to a version of yourself that was easier to influence. Elevation disrupts control, and resistance often disguises itself as concern. Another strong signal is subtle sabotage during critical moments. When opportunities arise, they may distract you, create emotional drama, or introduce doubt at the exact moment focus is required. This isn't coincidence. It's timing. Interference often waits until your breakthrough is near. Anything that consistently disrupts momentum at key moments deserves serious attention. Watch how they handle your independence. When you rely less on their opinion, guidance, or approval, they may withdraw emotionally or attempt to reassert influence. They may remind you of past help, sacrifices, or shared history to reestablish leverage. Support that demands indebtedness is not support. It is control seeking relevance. Another indicator is minimization of your progress. They downplay achievements, compare you to others, or suggest you haven't arrived yet. The goal is to keep you questioning your readiness. Confidence is dangerous to manipulation. When your wins are consistently reduced to luck, timing, or nothing special, something deeper is threatened. You may also sense urgency from them when you begin to detach. They suddenly seek your attention, reappear with kindness, or attempt emotional reconnection once you start pulling back. This is not always reconciliation. It can be fear of losing access. When closeness returns only when distance begins, the connection may be motivated by control rather than care. Another sign shows up as distorted loyalty tests. They frame disagreement as betrayal and independence as abandonment. This emotional framing pressures you to choose between growth and belonging. Healthy bonds allow evolution. Manipulative ones demand stagnation in exchange for acceptance. Elevation reveals truth. As you rise, misaligned connections either adjust or resist. Resistance is information. It tells you who benefits from your limitation and who celebrates your expansion. At this stage, the signs are no longer hidden. They converge. You see how exhaustion, confusion, guilt, resistance, and relational tension were never isolated experiences, but connected signals pointing to the same truth. Someone around you has been influencing your environment in ways that do not serve your well-being. This realization is not meant to create fear, but freedom. Awareness breaks unconscious agreement. Once you see clearly, you are no longer vulnerable to what relied on your blindness. The most powerful shift now is internal authority. You stop over-explaining. You stop seeking validation for what your intuition already confirmed. You trust your perception without needing permission. This is where manipulation loses its power, because influence only works when you doubt yourself. When your inner voice becomes louder than external noise, alignment naturally replaces confusion. Boundaries become your language of self-respect. Not dramatic walls, not emotional speeches, just calm, consistent limits. You give less access, less information, less emotional labor. You observe instead of reacting. You respond instead of explaining. Boundaries don't punish others. They protect your clarity. Anyone aligned with you will adjust. Anyone using you will resist. And that resistance confirms what you needed to know. You also release the need to expose or confront prematurely. Truth does not require announcement. Distance speaks clearly. Silence reveals motives. Time exposes intention. When someone is being used against you, stepping back is often more effective than arguing. You let behavior speak for itself while you reclaim your peace, focus, and direction. As you detach, something powerful happens. Your energy returns. Clarity sharpens. Motivation resurfaces. Opportunities begin to flow without obstruction. This is not coincidence. It is alignment restored. When interference is removed, momentum follows. You realize how much strength was being drained managing emotional distortion rather than building your future. This is your confirmation. If this message resonated deeply, it's because discernment has already been activated within you. You were never imagining it. You were sensing it. And now you are choosing clarity over confusion, authority over obligation, peace over proximity. Trust what you see, honor what you feel, protect what you are becoming. Not everyone close to you is meant to walk with you, but everyone reveals themselves.